This is a illustration of the most common problem or mistake of Polaris Snocross. Um, if you land with your nose too far down, what happens is that your weight slams down. It doesn't matter how strong your snowmobile is if you land like this, because all the weight of your snowmobile is in the front and it pushes down into the snow. And if you land something like this, then your tracks actually won't do much because you'll be slamming down into the ground. So luckily, snowmobiles are designed with a little spring at the back. And this spring, when you land it with your nose up a little bit, this gives the time for the spring to go up and then the tracks to kick in to give you extra acceleration. So what you can do is landing at the perfect angle. You can have the spring go down like this, and then if you hold up, you'll actually get this when you land. You actually, holding your nose up, you stick down. You can counteract these bumps when you hit the ground. So what I like to do, you can't hold this for too long. If you hold back or down on your stick for too long while you're landing, you end up actually doing another bounce over here because your nose is so far up that you're actually falling. It's falling again. So you really want to control where your nose is at and make sure that you land with enough of an angle so that your treads can kick in without being so much of an angle that you end up bouncing again. So what I like to do is try to estimate a landing angle. So I actually adjust how I land before I land so that I can only press up for just a moment to get this counteract between the landing momentum and the acceleration. So you do want to, as you land, press down on the stick a bit to get this initial acceleration. I try to calculate it out between these 2 points, try to calculate how far the first bounce is vertically, like how far up, and then counteract that with a different amount of holding up. So that's sort of how I calculate just this land. It's just a landing angle here. I try to have my sled not necessarily at this angle because the terrain will change and that will throw off this entire calculation. But this is sort of how I attempt to minimize the bounces when I land. Now, I'm just going to go in game and show you what that looks like in real time.
Alright, so to illustrate this in game, I'm going to have you first look at a landing in full speed on flat ground. You'll notice my speed always remains over 70 when I land. It's not always this perfect, but this just happens to be a flat area to land on. So if I take the speed to 0.5 times, you'll notice I launch myself from the ramp and I'm pointing my nose up. One very easy way to tell whether you land properly is to go into first person mode to see exactly how much wobble. See, there's very little vertical wobble on the whole frame. But this next landing, is really bad. So I end up dropping down to 68 like repeatedly, and on that time it actually means that I end up setting up for more bounces, bounce, 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 and then more bounces, bounce, 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 because I adjusted incorrectly. So that's a good example of overcorrecting. I believe this is you'll see a little bit of bouncing here. This is almost perfect here. You go all the way down for even when you're like below 60. You go start off, we're below 60 going over this hump, or below 70, and then we drop, and then we speed up all the way to 74. Went to 74 miles per hour before I got to the top of that hill. Each of these angles that I'm talking about are different depending on the angle of the ground. The illustration I showed before is just about landing on flat ground. So each of these calculations is a little bit different. With this tech, you can land perfectly and accelerate to each new ramp. And an ideal run should not only have the right lines, but also have each of the landings be perfect so that you gain as much speed as possible to go into the next ramp section. So you see here I have like a little bit of a crappy landing there, went down to 60, and then here I have a good landing immediately, so I'm back up to 63 or 73, 74. So even in my world records, you'll see a lot of bad landings. They're just not at the point where they're optimized to have no bad landings. Like that's my world record run, and I can show you the same thing in third person mode so you can have an idea of what that looks like. I think generally it's a good idea to transition towards first person, but it's a lot easier to tell what angle you're at when you're in third person like this. So the perfect landing that I said before is right here. You'll notice the lobster just kind of makes contact and then immediately accelerates forward, and this is the bad one, one of the bad ones I pointed out. See, I'm like bouncing, 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 and then it screws me up for this next section because I'm still bouncing by the time I hit that dip. So here's another good landing here on the slope. Dodge, and it looks like you hit the ground hard, and when you hit the ground like hard and flat, it instantly accelerates like that. So you see there's actually quite a bit more room for improvement. This is the most optimized run, and there's still a lot of bad landings. I suspect on some of the harder courses it's going to be difficult to really optimize, and that's one of the things I like about this game. It's very simple but hard to optimize. Here we have a bad landing coming up, so I'm bouncing, 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 and then a good landing right after it. So I angle myself, and then a good landing, I make contact, and then just go flying out. And there's all kinds of landings here. This doesn't just apply to big jumps, even little jumps. Like right here, just going off, landing right there. I have to get the right angle. So you're constantly trying to get the right amount of nose up and the right angle. And that's landing. If you have any questions, let me know. This can be a very difficult thing to get the hang of. It's not an easy thing. I'm still struggling with it, but this is where I see the future of Snocross going, is more perfect landings, and a lot, because you have perfect landings, you can maintain speed better between different sections, and that'll actually that opens up different routing on different courses. Because you're going faster, you can actually go beside ramps with this extra speed, and cut them out entirely, or you can have so much speed that you clear a section that you previously wouldn't be able to clear. That's it for landing. Thank you for watching, and take care.